Broadcasting live from the Wellness Wonderland, you're listening to the Wellness Wonderland Radio. I'm Katie, and each week I chat with the most inspirational people on the planet on how to stay inspired in all areas of life. As you listen, feel free to tweet at me at Katie Dalebout or use the hashtag Wellness Wonderland. I'd love to hear your aha moments. So grab your headphones and listen on the go, or cuddle up with a notebook as we dive in deep with authentic conversations right here in Wonderland. Welcome back, you guys, to another week of the podcast. I am Katie Dalebout, your host, and I'm so excited to be back with you and get into today's episode very quickly. But first of all, my book is out. It is no longer available for pre-order. It's available just for straight up order. So check it out. And if you pre-ordered it, thank you. You are awesome, and you already have the book in your hands probably. And if you haven't pre-ordered it yet, you are awesome too, and you can just order the book now. It's an amazing thing to have my book out in the world, and now it's not mine anymore. It's everybody's, and everyone can have their own experience with it. It's a very interactive book. I've been saying it's a scavenger hunt for your mind. It's something that is super interactive and personal, and I really want people to have their own experience with it, and I'm just eager to see what that is for each individual person. So please share it with me. Use the hashtag LetItOutBook on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook or wherever you want to share anything about the book or journaling or you with the book. I want to see. Send me pictures of your shelfies. Take a picture with your book and send it to me, or a picture with your bookshelf and send that to me. I would just love to see who your book is hanging out with on your shelf, and I would love to just hear about what you think of the book. So if you're in New York City tonight, it's my book launch party hosted by Gabrielle Bernstein, who wrote the foreword to my book and is my mentor, and my good buddy Jordan Bach, who you guys know has been on the podcast twice and again is a really awesome dude. He's going to be DJing. We've got lots of good tracks we're going to be playing tonight. Last night was our live podcast episode that I co-hosted with Christy Harrison, and thank you so much for all of the podcast listeners that came out last night. It was such an amazing event. So thank you guys for being there. Thank you guys for buying the book, supporting the book. I'm just overwhelmed with all the support and love that I've been receiving these past couple days and weeks, and I'm just really flabbergasted by all of it. I love you guys. So if you want to support the podcast, please share it with a friend. If you want to check out the book, please do so. You can get it on barnesandnoble.com, amazon.com, in the stores, and whatever bookstore you have around. If you want to support the book launch, go there and buy the book at the bookstore. That really helps a lot. And if they don't have it or they're out of it, ask them to order it. That's a great way to support the book launch as well. So thank you to all my book ambassadors. You guys are awesome. Thank you to everyone who's helped with the book launch. I'm just so grateful for all this support, and it's been so much fun. So enjoy today's episode. It is heavily about journaling, which I thought would be really fitting for basically the day my book comes out, the day after my book comes out, where this episode is airing. And one more thing I want to say really quickly is that last week, I didn't even realize, but it was episode 100 that aired last week. And I just want to acknowledge that milestone, that I've been doing this podcast for over 3 years. I started it back in 2013 when nobody really knew what podcasts were. And thank you, Serial, for changing that. But I'm so grateful that I've been able to continue doing the podcast for over 100 episodes now. And podcasting is really the new networking. I've met so many amazing people through not only my guests, who have all been awesome, but through the listeners. And I'm so grateful that I've been able to ask questions to people who I really admire, and then also ask questions to the people listening and get to know you guys. That's really what keeps me going, and it's just been such a fun journey, and here's to 100 more episodes. So it's very fitting the week that my book's coming out. We're on episode number 101, and hopefully there'll be many, many more to come. So thank you guys so much for listening. As always, keep in touch with me online, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Welcome back, everyone. I'm so excited to get to know today's guest with you guys. So today I have a writer, a speaker, a traveler. I love this, an adventure connoisseur, a holistic health advocate, and the creator of Healing from Within, Jenn Hand, who is the reason that we were connected is because she's a fellow journaler. And as you guys know, my book is all about journaling, and journaling was a huge part of my journey, I guess. My book is actually called Let It Out, A Journey Through Journaling. And yeah, it's just a big part of my practice in my life and something that I teach. I'm like a champion of journaling, a champion for journaling. And I think I have a fellow journaler in the house, in the Wonderland with me. So I'm really excited to talk to you, Jenn, and hear about your story and what you do and just get to know you because we were connected a long time ago, like over a year ago, I think. And yeah, we're finally making this happen. You were very patient and followed up, which I'm so glad that you did because we're finally able to have this conversation. So thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me. And I definitely am a fellow champion journaler and a big advocate of journaling because it has helped me so much in my own life. And I think some people find a lot of resistance to it. So I try and encourage them to, start slow and I promise it gets better. So I think journaling is a huge tool.
Yeah, well, I want to get into that a lot, but let's first introduce people to you. So tell us a little bit about, let's zoom the lens back to, how you got started doing the work that you do now and how you really got to where you are.
So my business right now is I'm a food coach who helps women struggling with binge eating, overeating, and emotional eating. And so, women who are really, really find that they're consumed with food and obsessive over their body image and just really, really struggling to find peace in their eating. That's, who I love working with. And the reason I got into my business is because that used to be me. I struggled with disordered eating for probably about 12 years of my life and just, cycled back between restricting and binging and dieting and just running all over the place on the spectrum between, low weight and high weight and middle of the ground. And so I got to a place with lots of journaling and therapy and introspection and a lot of inner work over the years. And so when I got to the place where I was really happy and secure and confident in my own self and my eating, I realized that it was my own calling to help others achieve that same thing and find that freedom, because I do think that we're not meant to struggle in our eating and fight with our bodies all the time. And so that's how I kind of got into my business. I studied holistic nutrition. I did graduate work in holistic nutrition, and so my initial plan was really to be a nutritionist, and then I kind of changed gears when I realized that it was a lot more than the food, obviously, and it goes much deeper into the work of emotional and mental and spiritual work as well. So that's kind of how I got to where I am. And, really just based on my own journey and being passionate about helping other women find that same freedom.
Yeah, so I want to flesh out a little bit of your story a little bit. So what was that experience like? Like, why do you think that you turned to food as your, as I say, we all have different coping mechanisms that we turn to, right? Like some people, when they're sad or stressed or feeling left out or feeling not good about themselves, turn to drugs or alcohol, and some people turn to food or not eating food or denying themselves food or exercise or trying to control their bodies in some way. So why do you think that what was your relationship with food like growing up? Why do you think that was kind of your go-to?
So for me, it started back in high school, and I was outwardly a very sort of had it all kind of person. I had a great family, great group of friends, played a lot of sports, was very involved in school, really good student. And I remember feeling this internal sense of self-hate almost with myself, of just not liking my body and I'd gone through puberty and gained a lot of weight, and I was just really, really unhappy. And I think it's really funny because my group of friends in high school, we kind of all joked that, we would just eat a lot and go out to eat all the time. And food was kind of a funny joke of like, oh yeah, like let's go eat a lot. And it became this, for me, that kind of social hobby almost, if you want to call it that, this bonding over, oh yeah, let's get dessert after we go to Red Robin and have chicken fingers and fries and get so full. And it became for me when I realized how it kind of, you got so full that you almost zoned out and numbed yourself out from what was going on, that it became more and more to me a tool to kind of numb out my feelings and try to get rid of that self-hate. And of course, with any eating disorder, I think many times it kind of cycles back and forth. You spend a lot of time binging and then you're like, oh my gosh, I need to lose weight, and you go into restricting. And so that was kind of my pattern of I would, eat and eat and eat. And at the beginning, it was a lot of my cycles were very long. So like I spent a long, many, many months restricting, and then, it would all hit the fan and I'd be binging for a month. And then over the years, it kind of got less and less. Like my cycles were like, okay, I'd be restricting for 3 days and then I just could no longer do it anymore. And then I have a binge and then I'd start over. And so I think food was just always really kind of acceptable. And so, I grew up in a really great family in a great area. And I don't think drugs and alcohol and other addictions were really, I think, acceptable to me. Like it was sort of acceptable to be eating or to sneak around and have food when no one was looking, or to be so focused on that because, it wasn't really sort of socially acceptable to have, to be an alcoholic in my family. But food, it wasn't, everyone eats and everyone has to eat all the time, and, food's always around. And so it became this acceptable, quote unquote, acceptable way for me to numb out my feelings.
So you really used food as a drug.
Yeah.
In that way. So then was there like a breaking point for you then when you realized that, this wasn't serving you? Like what was that moment where you were just like hit that bottom and went into the therapy and started to get on the path that you're on now?
It's actually interesting because, I really didn't know, and it's hard to believe, but I really didn't know I had a problem with food because I had, until about college, I was just so used to my lifestyle of either being a dieter or being a binger that I couldn't remember a time when I had eaten normally. I mean, I guess it was back, when I was younger. If people eat normally usually, so, maybe middle school, like I don't specifically remember a time when I was like, oh, I was a normal eater. But so in college, it kind of manifested as a lot of anxiety and depression and like panic attacks. And so I went to get help for that. And the man I was seeing at the time, I guess he kind of discerned that I was, needed help specifically in the realm of eating. And so he was like, I think you need to, he just kind of recommended, I think you have an issue with eating. And then as he said that, it kind of dawned on me, and I had gone to see a woman who specialized in eating disorders, and it kind of just dawned on me, I guess, that it was food that was actually the problem and not, of course, depression and anxiety and all that stuff. But underneath all of that was like I had this crazy, all over the place way of eating and approach to food that I didn't even know wasn't normal until someone was like, oh no, you have a problem with food. And I was like, oh, I didn't even know.
That's great that you had someone able to pick up on that because like you said, and that was the case for me too, I think, we often don't see that in ourselves. We're with ourselves every day. We don't notice when things go sour or, even on the other end of that, we don't really notice the self-improvement as much either. Just like, when you have a child that you're with all the time, you don't notice them growing. But when you see a child, that you don't see very often and they like shoot up and they're like super tall all of a sudden, because you don't see that growth.
That's such a good analogy. I like that one.
Yeah. So I think it's really interesting that, so you were in this program with this woman who specialized in eating disorders, and she was the one who first, what was like her treatment plan? I know she was the one who first kind of got you into journaling. Can you talk about that, and like what was her kind of thoughts for you and feedback for you and help for you when you were first getting started?
Yeah, and so for me, my journaling actually started out just as a food journal. And so her first piece of the puzzle was to really kind of get my physical body back into balance in terms of finding a way for me to eat normally. And so I was just giving my body what it needed on a regular basis, nourishment and fuel. And so her first recommendation was to keep a food journal. And so kind of, eating more often and more frequently. And she kind of gave me these guidelines. And from there, I kind of started. She had mentioned, once I got the hang of that, and was like, oh, I really like this. It helped me pay attention to what I was doing, because I was just, so detached from how food was impacting myself and my body, and what role it played in my life, that it started to have me pay more attention to, oh, this is what I was eating, and just kind of realize and understand how far from normalcy that I had been in my eating. And so from there, we started doing emotional work, and just kind of helping me understand the link between emotions and food. And of course, it's not as simple as just saying, oh, I'm stressed, I'm eating, or I'm angry, don't go to the food, or whatever it is. But I think initially linking how I felt before and after I ate and writing that down was really helpful for me, because it helped me to actually see that I had emotions. Because for so long, from high school till, after college, I had just used food as a way to completely disassociate from myself and me as an emotional being. Anytime I felt sad, depressed, lonely, anxious, anything, I ate. And I wasn't conscious of that, automatic behavior, but I began to see that, oh, I do have emotions, and here's what they look like. I mean, it was very messy, and it wasn't a pretty, like, oh, I feel sad, but it was, for me, my first foray into the world of emotions, and feeling that, and as a part of being a human being. And so, I really took to journaling because it helped me get in touch with the part of me that I had numbed out for so long. And I was afraid of it. I was afraid of the emotions and of letting it out, because it was scary. I hadn't learned how to deal with it and learned how to feel anything. And so that little baby step towards writing down my food and linking it with emotions was kind of the beginning of me being able to see and understand what my emotions were, what role they were playing, and how I could begin to start to handle them and deal with them and process them.
Yeah, that's so interesting, because I completely relate to that. And like you said, we have all of these emotions within us, but a lot of times we don't feel like we're good enough to feel our emotions. Yes. And if we don't feel them, emotions that are unfelt are not benign. Emotions that are unfelt just get put down further and further within us, and they manifest in depression and anxiety and in self-hate and in turning to food, or in our case it's food, but a lot of other people it's other stuff, right? It's, turn to a drink, or turn to drugs, or turn to a codependent relationship, or turn to work, and yeah. And I think that, for us, our go-to coping mechanism is food. And that's because we all have coping mechanisms, because we all have feelings we don't want to feel. And if you deny a feeling that you don't want to feel, it doesn't go away. It just goes down there further. And we've all had that experience where, like, you are feeling anxious or upset, or something happens and you turn to the food. And just because it's like the default reaction, like I do it all the time. Like, for instance, a couple weeks ago, I was stuck in traffic, and I was just like anxious, and I had an apple like in the front seat, and I just like automatically turned to the apple, and I didn't like want it right then. I really prefer to like cut an apple and like put some cinnamon on it and like sit and eat it. And, I don't like, it kind of hurts my teeth. They're sensitive, whatever. And I didn't want to, but it was just like my default reaction to like cope with that discomfort in that moment was to turn to the apple, And,
Yeah.
and I think that that's a really great story, because if you turn to the apple and then immediately judge yourself, and then you're just like, oh, and you eat the apple really fast. But what I did was I took a bite of the apple and I was like, oh, I don't really want this right now. And I was like, even though I had a bite of the apple, it's like, no problem. It's a freaking apple. And I just like wrapped it up and like set it aside. And it was like, oh, I just did my old thing again. That's okay. Now I can change. Like, I can choose again. And I think that's really good for people who, if you start binging or you start overeating, like, you can stop yourself halfway through, or you can not stop yourself, and that's okay too, because I think what really gets us tripped up is like, we think it's cut or dry and like you have to be perfect with your food all the time, but like, and then when you do mess up, we're so hard on ourselves that it just like perpetuates the cycle. So I think it's becoming aware that you're worth feeling your feelings, you're worth feeling your emotions. Because for me, I felt for so long that since I didn't like the way my body looked and I didn't like the way that I felt physically, not necessarily felt physically, like I felt well, I felt healthy, but I didn't like the way I looked physically, and I had a terrible body image. So that was, for me, whenever I felt a negative emotion, I immediately blamed it on that. And I was like, I'm not worthy to feel sad, depressed, lonely, whatever, even though those are negative feelings. And I'm not worthy to feel excited, happy, joyful, positive feelings, because every time I would try to feel one of those feelings, I would be like, oh, I can't feel depressed. If I would just change my body, I wouldn't feel that way. So I would default to that. Or if it was excitement, it was like, you don't deserve to feel excited because you don't look like someone who should feel excited. So I think journaling for me, like you, it started as a food journal. It started as something that my therapist, when I was in treatment for my eating disorder, recommended, and it was just writing down my food, and like then it just expanded and expanded until the food kind of dropped away and I was just talking about my feelings. So it's really interesting that was the case for both of us, and it was this gateway to, like you said, let it out, which is just so interesting. And thank you for sharing all that.
Sure. And one of the things I think people who struggle with food, I think there's this, and for me, this has been the case, and I think for so many women, it's like, what you were saying about you have choices, okay, you can stop binging, or you can, okay, but you cannot stop binging. But it's like this double layer of judgment that we put on ourselves after, like, of criticism and beating ourselves up. And, whether that's someone who just like goes on a diet and fails, or someone who like, has binge eaten for 2 days, it's like this extra layer of like, why did you do that? You're such a failure. Like, it's hopeless, and kind of just beating ourselves up for it. And I think journaling helped me begin to see that for myself, that it wasn't just that I was like mad that I had eaten 17 cookies. It was like that I hated myself for doing that, or thought it was such a failure, and like, just like beating myself up over it. And so I think journaling helped me see that, because when you're in your own head, a lot of times you just don't see it. And it's just, all just kind of like muddled up in your head, like the emotions, the thoughts, everything that's going on. And so you can't really take a step back and see it until you kind of slow down and let it out.
Exactly. Let it out. That is the reason I named the book that. And I talk about that in the book. It's like we have 60,000 thoughts a day. And it's so hard for us to actually know what we're thinking. And I often say this, but like, I don't know what I'm thinking unless I'm writing it down. When you take it out of your head, put it on the page, it's organized in front of you, and you can actually see it, and then you can feel it. Because you have to feel these feelings and feel these emotions to be able to move through them, to be able to release them, to be able to let them go. But you can't release them and let them go until you feel them, and you can't feel them until you know what they are. And so that's why journaling is such a fantastic tool, and it's so great that we both found it and found it to be so amazing. So going off of that, I have a couple of questions of like, how has it grown and changed and expanded in your life? And is it still part of your practice now? And how does it really come up for you?
So I still journal almost every day. And for me, I think I've realized that it's become an outlet for me. And, of course, I have great friends and sisters and a significant other who I can talk to and discuss things with. But for me, I think because I've for so long bottled up everything, and I think only fairly recently have I developed a healthy way of coping with my emotions without turning to food. It is me almost like a lifeline. Like I can't not journal because if I go a couple days without journaling, it just kind of builds up. And so for me, it becomes like a release, an outlet of, a safe place where I can, just share my thoughts and really, I mean, I don't go back and read them because I feel like if I did, I'd be like, who is this crazy person talking about these 16,000 thoughts that they've had like all in 1 hour? So I use it as a way to just not let things build up because my default for so long was to stuff everything and then eat. And now that I'm not doing that, it has to go somewhere. And so for me, the going somewhere is just pen to paper and getting it all out and just kind of and almost it's like a ritual of like I get it out on paper and then I'm done. I'm not carrying it. It's not weighing me down. I'm not thinking about it for the next, 17 hours. I mean, sometimes, there's situations where I do think about, but as far as just letting emotions and the other thing I think for me is that I use it as a way to get clarity. And when I get upset about something or I'm feeling off or just kind of like down or in a bad mood or something, many times I don't really know why. Like I'm like, why am I feeling off or down? And so journaling helps me gain clarity of, oh, I'm feeling resentful about something that happened, or I'm feeling unappreciated, or I didn't actually like what my boyfriend said to me, and I'm feeling really bothered by that. And so I think a lot of times because I used to stuff everything, it's almost trained me to gain clarity around letting things out and then seeing, oh, that's why I'm feeling like that.
Yeah, that is amazing. And I wrote down a couple of things that I want to pick up on what you said. And it's so funny because I cover so much of this in the book. Like, for instance, the piece about getting clarity, I think, is really important because if we ask ourselves good questions, we'll get good answers, And I think if we ask ourselves questions like, why does everything suck? Our intuition or our inner voice, or, some people might say God, the universe, whatever, a higher power, or our higher selves, or just a different part of our brain might say everything sucks because you're worthless and you're ugly and blah 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 blah. But if you ask like, what am I meant to learn from this, you'll get a different answer completely from your inner guidance. And that's what my book is all about. My book is 55 short journaling prompts to guide. Some aren't short. I keep saying short, but that's not even like what it is. It's 55 journaling prompts. And it's asking really good questions to get to those really good answers and get to like the dark corners of your mind that might be untapped. It's really going to push you and challenge you. And some of them are fun, but like something that I say in the book too is that it's like you said, it's free solo therapy, free solo coaching, because it's self-coaching. A lot of times I can coach myself on the page. Like I might start out just like letting out my feelings, really dumping out, brain dump what's in my mind, ideas, thoughts, feelings, good and bad, to-do lists, whatever. And then it might be really negative to start off with, but then by the end of the page, I start to like self-soothe. I start to make improvements and say, you know what, yesterday was horrible, but today is better. And this really good thing is happening. And I'm grateful for this. And I'm going to do this that will make me feel better. And I start to coach myself down the page. And it's really beautiful to watch. And then, the other thing I loved that you mentioned was the level of realness that you can get with a piece of paper. I think it's great that you have sisters and a significant other. And like you said, there's great people in your life, and I have great people in my life too. And it's not that I can't be real and I can't be authentic with the people in my life and my coaches and therapists. I can and I am, but there's still a little bit of a veil there with other human beings. There just is, no matter how authentic you are. But when you're with your journal, when you're alone with yourself, you can be completely unfiltered. You can be completely real. And I think that's just so beautiful. So I love that you picked up on that. And then the last piece is about how you can just let it go and release it. It's not something to go back to and have to read over again. And I think I heard you say this in the other interview with Peggy, who connected us, is that you don't go back and read your journals, like you said, because you might end up judging that person, and then that judging yourself for, oh, I can't believe I thought that, I can't believe I felt that way then, and why was I so obsessed with that thing that person said to me, or whatever. And if you start to do that, then the next time you journal, you might be a little bit less likely to be so real, knowing that your future self might be seeing this.
Yeah.
So I think that protection against your future self reading your journals is really nice to know that, like, that's not even going to happen. I'm going to just let this out and let it go. And something for me, I often journal on my computer and then I'll just like delete it right away. So I don't know. I think it's just really good to have this conversation, because I think a lot of people do journal. It's not like this is like some groundbreaking thing that only you and I do, but I just don't really hear about people talking about it as much as they should be for how much of a transformational practice it's been.
Yeah, and I think touching on what you said before about like the self-coaching, I think that's the beauty of being able to write, solo, is that everyone innately has their own inner guidance. And when you can quiet down your mind and the distractions and the hurry and hustle and bustle of your life, it's like you do have your own guidance and your own answers and your own wisdom. And so I think journaling can bring that out. And for me, that has helped me make decisions about, big life decisions about moving abroad and, career changes. And because I think you can get so caught up in your head around, well, my parents said this, and I feel like all my friends are saying this, and I don't know if this guy is right for me, and I don't know if this career should, I should do this. And I think when you journal about uncertainties and anxieties, and fears, you can, like you said, okay, maybe it starts out negative, but by the end, it's like, when all of this stuff is out, you're left with this voice that can guide you and give you the direction you need. And I think journaling can help bring that out, for anyone.
Yeah, I think you mentioned too in the other interview that you kind of use journaling as it's transformed now, where you're not writing about your food anymore. You're almost using it as like a letter, right? And you're like, can you talk about that?
Yeah, so a lot of times, I write. So I guess for somewhere along the line, decided that I felt like just writing down things was felt like really open and kind of like scattered to me, and like just so big, like it was just there, and like, who was I writing to? And so I started writing to the universe, and just because I felt like it was really personal, and it was like me talking, like, here's how I'm feeling, and I'm feeling super anxious about this and I don't know why. And so I felt like for me it was a way to get deeper by me connecting, or feeling like I was connecting to someone or something bigger than myself. Like, and I don't believe in like a God per se. I believe in the universe and higher power, and so some people write to God, some people write to, well, that's the only one I can think of. But like I kind of took a spin on that because I had heard about that, and I decided to just write to the universe because I felt like it resonated with me more. And so I don't know, it became this just gradual morph into something that helped me go deeper, because I felt like it was more focused. Like it wasn't just kind of like a diary. It was more like a personal connection with something greater than myself, where I could go to get answers and seek guidance and kind of, just dump everything out of that was weighing me down, and kind of get clarity and peace around it.
Yeah, that's amazing. And for me, it's the same thing. It's like it's kind of like it's a way to write out a prayer, write out an intention, write out a desire, and there's power to like putting pen to paper and getting the stuff in your head, the gunk in your head, out of your head and onto the page. Like I think I say this in the book too, that, you know, it's like clearing the pond scum, especially like that morning dump, right? The morning, that's the first tool in my book. It's the morning dump. It's very similar to Julia Cameron's The Artist Way, where you're just morning pages, first thing in the morning, front, back, front, just like emptying out your mind. And this type of journaling that we're talking about right now isn't like, 5 a.m. I did this, then I did that, then I did this, then he said this. Like sometimes it is, but a lot of times it's like I felt like this, and right now I'm feeling like this. And for me, the thing that journaling did better than anything was, like you said, giving clarity, but it helped me to be in the present moment. Because I think the reason why, I'll speak for myself, the reason why I turn to food, the reason why people turn to sex or drugs, or like the reason why anything is fun for us, right? The reason why we enjoy anything, that anytime I've ever had fun, it's in the present moment. It's when we physically are like here in the moment, emotionally, physically, and we're there. And I really struggle with being present, and I've realized that being present is everything when it comes to happiness. And it's something I really struggle with. And journaling, when you're writing, when you're actually like asking yourself, how are you feeling right now in this moment? You have to be there when you're writing it down. You have to be present. So it's like food, same thing. When you're eating, you feel the sensation of what's happening in the present moment. It's a way to snap you into the present moment. The same thing like with people who like cut themselves, right? It's like it brings them into the present moment. Like it's a physical thing. And so that's why I think journaling is so powerful for us, because it like those physical things brings us into the present moment instantly and acknowledges what we're feeling. Because and same thing with having a conversation, you really have to be present for that. And I think in our society now, it's like we're constantly multitasking, we're constantly doing a million things, and I'm so guilty of it. But I'll be like watching TV and also on my phone, and also thinking about what I'm doing tomorrow and what I'm gonna have for dinner. And like we're not really present very often. And in journaling, you have to be present. It's not something that you can take lightly. And it's such a beautiful practice. And I'm just so grateful for you to talk about it with me, because it's helped me so much. And I'm so grateful to have someone else who's into it just as much as I am.
Yeah, and it's funny to me that people resist it, because I mean, I'm a writer at heart. I love to write. And so I think when people are like, oh, well, I just don't know what I would journal about, or I just don't know what to say, and it's hard for me to understand, because I could, like, someone could give me a piece of paper and I could write about just like anything. And I think you're right about being present, because a lot of times the women I work with just don't, I mean, they're so like in their heads about everything. And and I'm guilty too. I mean, we spend so much time in our heads, like, and on the computer, and just thinking about what's next, that to really be able to get the guidance and the answers and the clarity, you have to, you're not going to get it from just going all the time. You get it from slowing down and being. And so I think that point about being present, I never really thought about it like that. And it's so true. Just how I mean, you're forced, gently forced to be present, because you're writing. So it's like you have to physically be there while you're doing it. And it's in our society, and just how fast we go, it's like, we need something to bring us back down. And with, of course, meditation and all that stuff that helps you get anchored in the now. I mean, I think a lot of times there's a lot of, fear and anxiety around it. And I think journaling is such a good place to start in, to step in the right direction of all of that, all the other tools that you can use, because journaling isn't that far from writing a letter or sitting down and just, getting your thoughts out, as opposed to like, oh, I'm going to sit down and meditate. It sounds scarier than to say, okay, I'm just going to sit down and write for 3 minutes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think though that does sound really scary to people, and it probably did to me at a time too. Like, I also like writing, but I don't want people listening to this who don't like writing, because I didn't like it. Like, there was a time where I didn't, and I think this is not like writing an essay. This is not like having to sit down, when you were in school and like write something or write something for work, even writing an email. This is very intuitive. This is a way for you to like, we are all meant to write like this. If you can speak, if you can send a text, you can do this kind of writing because
Ooh,
it's
that's a
just,
good line. I should write
yeah,
that.
yeah, I say that in the book too. I'm like reading you the book from memory basically right now. But basically it's like that whenever people give me that smack, cuz like the girls that the people, I shouldn't, the women that I work with, they constantly give me that smack about, well, I don't have anything to say. I'm not going to be able to do it. I don't have anything to say. Well, if you ask yourself a really good question, you're likely going to be able to have an answer. And it's like with anything, it's a practice. So it does get easier over time, but eventually you'll feel like you were saying, like if I don't do it for a couple days, I'll have so much pent up that I'll have so much to say when I do it, and I'll feel really emotional and I'll just feel off. And if I journaled a lot one day, the next day I won't really have much to say, and I might not journal at all. I might just like check in and be like, yeah, I'm good. Like I don't have anything right now. And that's fine too. And so I think my book is a good tool because it does give you those questions, and there's different categories, and it will help you get into all these different areas of your mind. So for people who it is really hard for, and even people who it's not, but they want to like try different ways, that'll be, and challenge themselves, I think that will be really helpful. But right now I think everybody can just ask yourself something that you're wondering about, or that you're wishing that you had guidance on, or something that you just wish you could like talk to someone about, or that you're curious about, or writing down like lists of things a lot of time is really helpful for me, like ideas or fears or worries, and just like letting that go, like putting it out, it makes it feel really good. Like, have you ever had a conversation with someone and you just like completely, it was just like a great fireside chat, and you really like told someone what was going on in your life, and after the conversation you just felt like way lighter, you know what I mean?
Yeah, those are the best.
Yeah, the best. And so it's just like that, I think. It's just with but it's with yourself or your higher self, or with your journal, and it's such a beautiful relationship, and it's a way to get to know yourself, because like I said, like I don't know I didn't know who I was until I started journaling. I didn't know how I felt. I didn't know if I was emotional or not emotional, or what I even liked. Like I really had to get to know myself by becoming worthy of feeling my feelings, becoming worthy of exploring what was going on in my mind. And yeah, it just really opened doors for me in that.
This is totally inspiring me to like shout from the rooftops that like everyone needs to journal right now.
Right? I know. It's really powerful. Is it something that you find yourself recommending to your clients a lot?
I do, and some are much more receptive than others, and but I guide my clients to journal, because a lot of the work that we do in between sessions, does involve answering questions and going deeper, and so I think when you and it's exactly what you're saying, like if you have prompts and you have like a general direction, it helps start the flow. And and I think even if people just sat down and wrote out like, what am I afraid of, or like what am I worrying about right now, like you were saying, I mean we carry so much stuff like in our minds and on us that, I mean, there's probably like you could just write like 20 things right now about like, I'm worried about my kid, my husband, and my rent
Hmm.
next month, and all this stuff, and not even getting into like the emotions, but more about physical life circumstances or situations.
Yeah.
And so I think when you have a little bit of guidance in that, it just makes it a lot easier, because you're starting with a question. And right now I think um I've gotten to the place where I don't necessarily have prompts. I've gotten so used to writing that like I can just write. But in the beginning I definitely, was like, what was I feeling before I ate? What was I feeling after I ate? Or what was going on in my head? Or what situation was happening where and why did I feel the way I did? And so I think it's just kind of exploring, or beginning to explore, just feelings and anxieties and worries and kind of the negative stuff, which really leads you to, I think, how you can feel also those positive feelings. Because if you're not in touch with either, it's like you don't know what's going on in your, in your body or in your mind, in your emotions. And so I think it's like a doorway to, not just feeling the low stuff, but also like feeling the joy and the happiness and the innate contentment of yourself, and kind of understanding that you are an emotional being, and that's okay. You can feel both sides of the coin, and not have anything be wrong with that.
Yes, we limit ourselves. I think we really limit ourselves in what we allow ourselves to feel. Like, we tend to only focus on like the baseline feelings and not the high highs and the low lows. Kind of can get glossed over, but every feeling on the spectrum deserves to be felt fully, and this really helps with that. So this is so good. This powwow on journaling was like unexpected and amazing, and so cool. But I want to get back to you and to food a little bit. So what would you say that your relationship with food and your body is like now? What does it feel like now?
So I definitely am in a place where I really don't focus so much on food. I am very intuitive in how I eat. Of course, when things are wrong, my go-to mechanism would still be food, but I always catch myself. So, like, if I find myself coming home from a long day and I'm like, oh, looking at my pantry for something, and I'm kind of like looking around, and that's my own cue for myself, like, oh, I really want to find some chocolate and just eat it. That's my cue to sit down and be like, okay, what's going on? And so, I have a very peaceful relationship with food, but I think, and what I try and tell, for every woman who asks me, like, well, when am I going to get to the end? Like, when am I going to feel free and peaceful around food? And I tell them that, yeah, there's absolutely a place to feel peace and freedom in your food. The part, though, is that I think an eating disorder becomes a doorway into a more authentic you, a more conscious, aware you. And so when you do find yourself, or for me, like when I do find myself looking for food or wanting something or really craving something, it's my own signal to go deeper and look at what's going on, see how I'm feeling, whether that's emotionally, physically, or mentally. Maybe I hadn't had enough protein and that's why I'm craving, or maybe something was going on emotionally. And so I think for me, my relationship is that it's really, really healthy. And I also am still conscious of the times when I do want to turn to food, but I have the coping mechanisms to not turn to the food. But it's just sort of my signal. And I think as far as body, I would say my relationship to my body is definitely a work in progress. I think that came a lot later. I think my relationship to food was in a much better place, and then I realized I still had some work to do on, accepting my body. And for me, it helps to kind of like go beyond my body, instead of being like, okay, I need to accept my size, I need to accept myself, I need to look in the mirror and love myself. It's about like connecting to a place within me that's, my spirit, my soul, whatever you want to call it, where I know, like, I deeply know that I'm more than my body. And so my biggest work right now is to really try and not like hate my body or love my body, but more realize that I'm like beyond my body. So I think it's definitely been a journey. I mean, I did like affirmation work and mirror work, and all of the tools that kind of can help in body image. And I think as I grew more and more spiritually, my relationship to my body became better and better, because I understood that it wasn't just about me liking my stomach. It was about much more than that. If that makes sense.
It makes so much sense, and that's beautiful and so helpful, and I relate to a ton as well. I think the body image work is the piece to really cement this and just make this all a bit easier, but it's also the hardest thing, and it's also the thing that is always a work in progress, like you said, because all day long we have the media and everyone out there telling us the opposite, telling us lose weight, diet, focus on your body, you need to look a certain way, you need to be thinner. And then at the same time we have messages like eat, be a foodie, look at all this food on the Food Network, but also don't eat too much because you need to look a certain way, so it's just like, what do we even do? There's just so much confusion. So the body image work is challenging because of the diet culture that we we live in and the thin privilege that our society gives people, and how people do discriminate on the basis of size and weight every single day. So, of course, we will default, if you haven't done this work, to wanting to diet and wanting to restrict and wanting to, therefore, wanting to binge and wanting to go off the wagon, so to speak, and wanting to control and change our body. Like, it's so, of course, it's so natural as women and as people in this society that we live in. So anyways, it's a challenge, and I think having conversations like this and journaling and just bringing awareness to this is all really, really helpful, to me and to other people. And I think the biggest way to help feel better about your body and your body image is to have community and have role models and have people talking about this, because most of the world is talking about the opposite. They're talking about like the fight on obesity and that everyone should be dieting and the health craze and all of this stuff that, like, you know, you and I are even a part of in many ways. Like we are into those things ourselves, but it's also not everything. Like you said at the beginning, it's not all about the food. It's about all these underlying issues, and it's not all about the body. We're more than our bodies. We're like the spirit and the soul within our bodies. So anyways, I think that body identification can really, instead of spirit identification, can really trip us up, and it's good to have conversations like this. So thank you for sharing all that.
Sure. And I think also for me is when I feel not acceptable or not good enough, like something happens in my life and I'm feeling not enough. I think those are the times when I sort of translate that really big ambiguous concept into like, oh, my stomach needs some work, or like my thighs need to be smaller, because it's like a much more tangible thing to look at and fix and kind of have a solution for. And so again, it becomes like a signal. So if I find myself fixating on my thighs or my stomach or another part of my body, it's my own signal to be like, okay, well, what's really going on here? Like, your stomach has looked the same for the past 3 years and however long, and it's it hasn't changed since yesterday. So what all of a sudden made you start hating your stomach today? And I think that's like my own cue to get back either into journaling to see what's going on, or to really kind of do some meditation or yoga, or to get myself in a place where I'm consciously connecting to the part of me that's more than just seeing my stomach in the mirror.
So amazing. Yeah, that's so using these things as a symptom or a signal of something else deeper. It's like if you have a cough, you're not going to be like, oh my God, the cough. This is a terrible example. It's the bigger thing. It's the cold. Like, do you have a virus? Like, do you have pneumonia? Like, do you have something caught in your throat? It's like the cough is just a symptom of like a bigger issue. I could probably think of like a better example of that, but
no, I get it.
Yeah, I don't know. It works. All right. So now let me get personal with you. So what does your morning routine look like? What are some of the first few things you do when you get up in the morning, and how does what you do in the morning affect what you do in the rest of the day?
So I've actually adopted a new morning ritual in the past couple months that I've been really trying to anchor into my routine. So I decided I really wanted to start to really appreciate what I had in my life, instead of thinking that what I had wasn't enough or always wanting more. I wanted to really like soak in and appreciate what I had. And so I started waking up and just thinking of 5 things that were just like super awesome in my life. Like, just anything. It could be like, oh, it was 75 degrees yesterday and I went for a walk. Or it could be, oh, I had an amazing client call. Or it could be like, I have food to eat, anything, just to kind of really start to anchor in more gratitude. Because I think it's just, especially for me, I tend to view things I'm very quick to see the negative as opposed to quick to see the positive. And so I really am trying to train myself to more and more and more look for what's good in my life. And then the second thing I actually do is I have a cup of hot water and with a little bit of lemon squeezed in. And I started this I gave up coffee about, 6 or 7 months ago. And I started this as a replacement for coffee to just really start to detoxify and cleanse my system and kind of like get myself going in the morning. And so those are the first 2 things that I do. And I think they just help me get set up for the day of just like being energetic and being grateful and kind of arriving and welcoming the day instead of being like, oh my gosh, like my alarm went off at 5:30. Why do I have to get up? And, kind of bumbling around in that whole state. So I'm really trying to like set up my day so I'm like happy and really grateful and excited instead of like, oh, another day.
Yes, that is so good. I love the um, morning 5 gratitudes while you're still in bed. That is fantastic, and I'm going to adopt that. And I also drink warm water with lemon in the morning, which I love as well.
You start
So
to crave it after a while. You're like, I need my morning cup of water.
yeah, it's really nice, and I love that it's warm. What about in the evening? How do you end your day? How do you relax and shut down, especially being an entrepreneur at the end of the day?
So I actually journal. I usually end my day with, I have a notebook right beside my bed, and just kind of like getting things out and kind of just, it's almost like I cleansing, kind of just like letting the day go, letting your thoughts go, emotions. I also, and I don't do this every night. I'd say maybe like 4 or 5 nights out of 7. Doing meditation, like 10 or 15 minutes of just sitting down and just breathing, just focusing on my breath. And maybe sometimes I'll listen to like chanty yoga music or just sometimes silence. But so I really love doing that. I think it helps me kind of calm down and relax. But my evenings are pretty relaxed. I don't watch a whole lot of TV, so it's a lot of like quiet and or reading or preparing dinner. But like before I go to bed, it's journaling and or meditation.
That's amazing. I'm so glad that it's come full circle now back to journaling.
We can't
um,
escape it.
no, we can't. So, how are you challenging yourself in your life right now? What is something that you're doing that you're afraid of that you're doing anyways?
Actually, I think having my own business. I think it for anyone that is has their own business. I think they tell you, in quotes, they tell you that it's the best personal development you'll ever get. Best crash course in personal development, because it just brings up so many challenges and self doubts and fears and anxieties. And so for me, I began with a passion for helping women overcome their own eating issues. And with that passion morphing into a business comes a whole other set of things I had to learn about a business, the entrepreneurial side. And so for me, I think since I'm still fairly new into the game, there's still things I'm constantly learning. And just last week I decided to start an interview series on my blog, and it was just like learning the tech and like how to record. And it ended up being really simple once I got the hang of it. But just like those little tiny things that crop up all the time that I look back at, the last 2 years, I'm like, oh my gosh, I've learned so much. Like just every day it's something different that I have to learn or figure out, or, type in something in Google and like, watch a YouTube video on how to do it. So I think that would be the way I'm challenging myself, because I think it's sort of a challenge on all levels. The mindset piece has been huge for me, of just learning to believe in myself and really anchor myself in my own knowing and passion, and not let the kind of, oh, well, why isn't it happening fast enough? And what's going on here? And, why didn't this turn out the way I wanted it to? Let all of that kind of take control, and bring myself back over and over and over to the, why I started my business in the first place, and helping me, use that as my reason to keep moving forward, even though it's challenging.
Yeah, that's great. I think I've heard this before, but I think being an entrepreneur is like the best thing you can do for personal growth, um,
Yes.
which is really intense and a lot sometimes, but a really great journey to be on. So thank you so much, Jen, for everything you shared. You're such a cool person, and I'm so glad that I got to know you a little bit. Let's wrap up with some quick fire questions. You ready for them?
Yes.
Okay. Favorite color?
Purple.
Favorite day of the week?
Friday.
Favorite hour of the day?
Early morning, so like 5:30, 6 a.m.
Favorite vegetable?
Tomatoes.
Favorite fruit?
Strawberries.
What's the best thing you've eaten recently, like in the last week?
Ooh, I made roasted fall vegetables that were just amazing. So just spices, cut up eggplant, sweet potatoes, carrots, onions, peppers, and roasted them all. And it was kind of my first fall baking, like hearty meal. And I was like, oh, this is so good.
Oh, that sounds delicious. I want to like eat that for dinner immediately. What's your go-to breakfast?
Eggs, usually scrambled on a piece with a piece of spelt bread on the side.
What's your favorite way to relax?
Usually yoga or hiking in the mountains.
You live in Denver, right?
Yeah,
With,
so
like so many great
there's
hiking
tons of
opportunities.
nature and hiking places around here.
That's amazing. What's your like practical tip for staying organized, like as an entrepreneur and just in general?
I think I would say keeping no, actually I would say not procrastinating. So I think I would tend to get really disorganized when I just have things I just keep adding to my list that I never do because I'm just thinking about doing them. So when I'm not procrastinating, I tend to stay more organized.
Very cool. That's a huge one for everyone. What's your favorite place you've ever traveled to?
I would say Vietnam has been one of the most amazing countries and beautiful countries I've ever been to.
Oh, wow, very cool. If you could have a superhero power for a day, what would it be?
I always want to say like reading people's minds, and then I'm like, but do I really want to know what people are thinking?
You could just go read their journals.
That's true.
That's funny. What is your favorite movie?
Remember the Titans.
Favorite book?
The Poisonwood Bible.
Oh, I haven't heard of that.
Yeah.
Favorite song?
Unwritten by Natasha Bedingfield.
Oh yeah, I haven't heard that song in so long.
Oh, I feel like it's just I don't listen to it super often, but it's like just such a good pick me up and inspiration, and I love.
I can like hear it in my mind.
Yeah.
What are you most excited about in your life right now?
I'm excited about the next phase of my business because I feel like I'm really making a lot of mindset shifts that will help me expand and move ahead. And I don't want to say at a faster pace because I think everything happens at its own time, but I think maybe in a more calm and centered place within myself.
That's amazing. So, as you know, the name of this podcast and the name of my blog is The Wellness Wonderland. So when I offer that term to you, Jen, to live in a wellness wonderland, what comes up? What does that mean to you?
For me, it means like just complete nourishment, like being surrounded by what you could pick as like the most nourishing things that like fill your soul and just make you smile and make your heart sing and just are so like nurturing and comforting and fill you up from the inside. So whether that's food or music or scenery or people, just having it be like almost a holistic medley of like everything that you could want, all levels in your life.
That is so amazing, and a big side of journaling, right?
Yes, that's right.
Well, thank you so much, Jen. It was so fun to hang out with you. And where can everyone find you online?
So my website is www.jennhand.com. JENNHAND.
Cool. Amazing. You are so cool. This was such a fun conversation, and thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thanks for listening. You made it all the way to the end. I'll be back next week, but until then, let's stay inspired and keep this conversation going. So tweet at me at Katie Dalebout and our guest with your aha moments from this conversation. And like the Wellness Wonderland on Facebook, so we can all hang out there and discuss how inspired we are and how we'll apply it in our daily lives. And never miss another episode or post from me by signing up for email updates on thewellnesswonderland.com. See you back in Wonderland.